So here we are going to focus on the outliner window. The outliner window is this window just to the left. I have prepared a small Maya scene for you that will help you better understand how the outliner works with some simple exercises that are quite visual and I think will allow you to grasp how the outliner functions more effectively. So to put it simply, the outliner is a bit like our control panel, our history, or if you prefer, it's also our shopping list. In fact, see it however you want, but concretely, the outliner is a window that displays the elements of the 3D scene. It allows you to visualize and manage everything that makes up the scene. Let me explain. Here we have a bunch of objects. You see, it's not like earlier when we only had a single cube. Here we have a whole bunch of small objects that I modeled quickly and beautifully. And well, all these objects are listed. They are listed. They are not just visual elements of the 3D scene, we can see them appear as text. And that is what essentially constitutes this outliner and more. For example, if I select this cone right here, this green cone, you can see that as soon as I select this object, it is highlighted in blue. If I simply select that object, there is also a highlight in the outliner. And the same goes for all objects. The same applies to the camera as well. Do you remember when I told you to create a camera? Create camera from view. And we end up with a persp1. Persp1 here and a persp1 here below. It is from persp1 that I can move. And once the view suits me, I can switch back to the normal persp, the very first one. Do you remember we saw it? It appeared just here in our viewport. Well, we can also interact with this camera, select it, and it also appears in the outliner. That's one thing. Next, the outliner allows us to select various objects, as we can select them in the viewport, but we can also select them in the outliner itself. If I select P3, it selects this box here, P5. Same, this sphere here, P6, this sphere here. If I click on the cone there, it's different. We select two objects. From this point on in the tutorial, I will refer to the objects as meshes, because an object is a mesh, and all of that is a series of meshes. It's a mesh, it's a mesh, it's a mesh, it's a mesh, and it's a mesh. But, as we can see, by carefully selecting the cone GRP, which is a group of objects, we are actually selecting two distinct meshes that are part of this group. Simply because this cone GRP does not have the same icon at all as that. This is a mesh. This is a group. It is a group of meshes. This group of meshes actually indeed contains our two cones, our two mesh cones. It's simple. To see what a group contains, you can click on the small plus here. So it's very simple. It's essentially like a small group that contains a few different meshes and more. So here I have prepared this little group with the cones that we can select here. And I also created a second group, actually three groups, a second group here containing these kinds of chains. Similarly, it's a group that contains chain 1 and chain 02. So for everything that is in order, in a proper and organized manner, of the naming convention, it is simple, and there are several. There are multiple ways to name your meshes and groups. I name it like this, meaning that for everything that is a group, I put the name, and then I add an underscore, and GRP in uppercase. As for the meshes, I call them by their name, so chain and 01, 02, in order to differentiate them. You cannot have two meshes with the same name in a 3D modeling software or any other application for that matter. You see, if I duplicate this mesh, I will explain how to do it just after. You will see that it will be renamed chain 3. So, how do we duplicate a mesh? Well, we press Ctrl D, which allows us to duplicate it, and we can see it appear directly in the outliner. That's super handy. For example, I can Ctrl D this cone, and then Ctrl D again just like that. Here, nothing is happening. We can see neither in the viewport that it is duplicated, nor in the Octane renderer that it is duplicated. And that's completely normal. It's because the group is not expanded, actually. So we just have to expand it by clicking on the plus, and there we see that cone 3 has appeared. So, that's one thing, you know. Now, within these groups, there can be other subdivisions, or groups, in fact. Actually, that's essentially the whole idea of the concept of the hierarchy, and basically, let's take this box right here. So this box exactly belongs to the toy box. Let's click on toy box to select the entire group. So all of this belongs to the toy box group. If we expand toy box, we can see that we have a mesh box, box 01, and another group. This is a subgroup of toys group, and this subgroup is called toys group, and we can expand it as well. We expand it. So we can see that this group toys group contains all these objects here. Remember, to isolate meshes, we can also isolate groups too. I can easily isolate my toys group, just as I can easily isolate my toy box entirely. But here, we will focus on the toys group. Let's discover. We deselect, then reselect in order to get the desired hidden element back. Well, let's take a closer look at these toys. In these toys we have ball 01, ball 02, ball 04, and ball 03. We also have the cube, and we have a large subgroup of the subgroup. Yes, I know, it can be a bit confusing. But still, we have one group in our team that is currently working on this project and making progress together. And if we unfold it, we will have the specific and intricate details of the meshes in this group, in detail. To summarize, essentially what we have here in these objects are various and different types of meshes. But here, this is not a mesh. It is a set of meshes, meaning it contains several parts that are completely separate. And those parts, it's best to group them together in a group. This is where the usefulness of the outliner comes in, as it helps with organization. And organization in 3D is extremely important. So there you go. Simply put, I grouped this together because I wanted to make a bilboquet. I wanted to create an object, a toy, excuse me. But while making this toy, I realized that I needed several meshes. So I grouped them together. I put them all together in a group with all the other toys. This group is the toys group. And then I created a global group that contains my box, my toys, and that makes the toy box. Is it a little clearer? Don't worry, we will implement all of this. So if we wanted to summarize a little bit what I have said in the last 10 minutes, one could see the outliner and the groups, the subgroups of the subgroups, the meshes. You could ultimately see this as a kind of, you see the Russian dolls, well that's it. It's a little bit a doll, a mesh inside a doll, which contains another doll, which contains another doll. And finally, this is what we call hierarchy. You have a big group here. Then that group contains a mesh, and another group that itself contains meshes. So it really creates a sort of tree. In fact, a kind of tree with parents and subparents. You see, family trees are a little bit the same thing. So let's maybe start with how to create a group. That would be nice. To create a group, it's very simple. You can basically create a group that contains no mesh. You press the outliner. You are here. You hover over the outliner and left click on it. and you press Ctrl-G, Ctrl-G will create a null group for you. A group that we call a null group. Why null? Because it contains no mesh, no groups. It contains absolutely nothing. This means that you cannot expand it. You cannot do anything with it. But on the other hand, we can indeed put things into this group. We can actually, in fact, interact with these three meshes that I left here for you. I hope you find them useful. I left these three meshes here for a reason, because they have no group. They have no group, and I want them to have one. I want to create a single group that encompasses the box and the two spheres. A large general group that includes the box and the two spheres. And I also want the two spheres to be grouped into a subgroup within this large group. Are you just following me? So to do this, we can, first solution, fill our famous null group, which doesn't actually exist in the viewport since it contains nothing. It's really an empty data point, but we can fill it, as I mentioned, by left-clicking on the mesh of your choice, in this case on P3, holding down the left click and dragging it to the null group. Then you release the left click, and we realize that P3 has disappeared. It is now inside our null group. Magic. We can do this exactly the same for P6 and for P5, R5 hop. So here we have our big group, our big null group. Well, I want to tell you, we might not let him call it a null group after all. We're going to give it a little name. And to give it a little name, it's very simple. We just need to double click, there we go, left double click on the name of the group, and we will rename it Spherebox. This is the Spherebox application. Hangar_score GRP is a part of it. And there you have your group Spherebox GRP. I will expand it further for you. And there, those names are a little bit uninteresting, so we will change them as well. We are going to modify the names of our meshes. For P3, we will rename it by double-clicking and calling it Box 01. Because you never know, over time, we might want to add another little box underneath. Our modeling, our scene, our asset, something that will be called. So we might as well name it Box 01. You never know if you might want to duplicate that mesh. It's always handy. Once we agree, we click elsewhere. We'll do the same for the P-sphere 6, which we will call Sphere 01. And there we go, for this Sphere 01. Now look, if I name it Sphere 01 and press enter or click, it doesn't matter. In the empty space, you see that it will automatically rename itself to Sphere 02. As I mentioned, you cannot rename a mesh twice. The same applies. So that's great, but I want my two spheres to also be in a group as well as... Now, you might say to me, well, it's very simple, Antoine. You just press Ctrl-G, and that essentially creates a null group that is basically empty. And then you can place your spheres by dragging them, and then you can easily and safely put your sphere group into the group, and securely. Exactly like the strands, like what we did earlier. Well, it's not that intuitive. Well, yes, you can do that, of course. You can do it by dragging it into Spherebox. And there you go. And there we have our group Spherebox, with our box inside and our subgroup that contains our spheres. But there is a slightly faster way to do what we just did. So I press Ctrl-Z. I Ctrl-Z until I carefully manage to successfully delete my null group. There we go. Back to just before we created our second group. Well, what we can do is, instead of doing our Ctrl-G, which creates an empty group, we redo it, and that gives us several manipulations. And no, we can do something much simpler, which is to click on Sphere 1, hold Shift, click on Sphere 2, and this will select two objects. We can even select as many as we want, And now we will select sphere 1 and sphere 2, release Shift, and press Ctrl G. And there you go, plus they don't have a random name. They are called Group 1 because we already have meshes inside, which are our sphere meshes that are automatically placed inside. Well, we will rename it, and we will name it make _grp. And there you go, you have created your first groups. Great, right? Yes, I know, it's not very fun for now, but I swear it's super practical. And this is really an essential step in Maya. So, I can tell you 2 to 3 little tips, for example. If you try to put sphere 2 into sphere 1, which logically isn't possible since you are trying to put a mesh into a mesh, it's strange. I'm trying. There, it's going to create a little extra for me. I have a hierarchy. I have a sub-parent of a mesh. So this is where it gets a little bit complicated, and we will surely see this later in the tutorial, but it is possible to do that. However, for now, in your case, it is of no interest at all. And we will rather stick to our famous groups. And that's just fine. Like that. There you go.